Fouad, Stephanie, I'm very excited to have you on this week's episode of the Silicon Valley podcast. Now, for our audience at home, I think I've been somehow affiliated with the Lamarca and the multiverse here in Palo Alto pretty much since day one that you've been here in Silicon Valley. And I've seen you grow over a very short amount of time. And we're going to go into everything you've accomplished in that short amount of time. But before even going there, Fouad, Stephanie, can you give our audience a little bit of background of your career up until this point?
Oh, yeah. So my background in the consulting industry. So I spent a couple of years with a management consulting firm like EY, then DuPont, before, in 2014-15, decided with some of the partners to start Lamarca, which is basically started as a consulting firm. We grew up the first project that we had literally was like a couple of $1,000s until today. We have maybe a revenue of maybe $10 million each year. Something happened in 2019, 20, Corona, post-Corona, that we thought of introducing other service lines to Lamarca. So we introduced a startup studio and a VC. So today the definition of Lamarca is like the ultimate platform for consulting, for strategy and technology and innovation. So we're very active in consulting, building companies, and also investing as well.
That journey is amazing, but why not just double down on the consultant? Why go broader into VC, into venture studio?
Yes, because we missed so many opportunities. Like when we started doing incubators and accelerators, some of the startups that went through our programs, they became really big. And that was like, I think we can do something there. And that's why we kind of now, when we run these programs in terms of consulting or any other programs, we see the ones that we think fit our investment thesis and the way that we basically evaluate those businesses, and we pick the ones that we think that they're winners. Yeah.
So if you had picked those winners, would you be here today?
No. No. But yeah.
Stephanie, can you tell us a little about your career, your background before we dive into the questions?
So I have a similar journey, actually, a little bit to Fouad. I started as a strategy consultant with a firm called Monitor Group, headquartered out of Cambridge, Massachusetts, real focus on strategy and competitiveness. And I actually was working with them from early in the 2000s on emerging markets and the Middle East. And I moved out to Dubai in 2007. And what was so interesting about the economies out there and the ecosystems was that they went through the value chain of governments thinking about how to develop national visions, then developing national strategies, economic strategies, always this desire to move towards innovation-driven economies and innovation ecosystems. But now we're kind of at this phase, I think it's only been about 7-8 years, where there's really been a concerted effort to help build those startup ecosystems. So I left Monitor in about 2013. I was working independently, sort of moving into that innovation and startup space, and now have been working with Lamarca. We've been working together on and off for, I think, like 5 years or something. And just to see, how there's this place and this opportunity to sit at this intersection of policy and building the ecosystems, investment, connecting the different markets across the world through these innovation bridges. That's really exciting. So it's a great place to be out there.
So Fouad had mentioned missing out on some opportunities. What do you see kind of the investor landscape right now in the Middle East? How has it changed? What was it years ago? What's it now? What do you think it'll be 5 years from now?
So I think the key thing here is that they're young ecosystems. They've started small. They're growing fast. I feel that about maybe 7-8 years ago, if someone said the word startup, it wasn't really clear what they meant or what that was. There's a long history of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurialism. Small and medium enterprises have always been important. There's been a lot of folks opening their own businesses, trading, things like that. But to really get into the startup space, we need scalable VC-backed companies, tech-enabled. And I've seen how, the small group of investors, a lot of them had some experience doing this in the West or other places and started coming back and seeding it. And that's grown. There's a much, much larger, much, much more experienced pool of investors developing now. But it's still, compared to the Valley here, a lot of it is concentrated around early stage investing, just because that's the point at which the startups have got to. And we're starting to see them emerge now beyond seed and A, and we're seeing some real success stories growing out of that. But there hasn't been the landscape for growth or late stage investors yet, because the ecosystem just hasn't matured. So I think that's one of the key differences between a young ecosystem and a place like the Valley.
How are the investor dynamics there? And what I mean by that is, do they want to invest and just get a minority, small portion of the company? I don't know, 10, 20, 25%? Or are they looking for more, hey, if I invest in you, I want to control everything and you're now my employee? How is the dynamics there for the investor entrepreneur? Is it similar to Silicon Valley or completely different?
Yeah, so I think it has changed. Like 2015, that was really typical that, all people come from different backgrounds. They're new to basically investing in tech. And it was really difficult to convince a lot of them to kind of have smaller equity and then encourage and have the CEO motivated to go with the startup. But we see this changing a lot because we had some success stories. Yeah. One big challenge until today, maybe the number of success story is not that big. And one of the reasons still like exits are not that many. The exits still are rare. And the corporate kind of acquisition is still, it's in the early stage. So we don't see a lot of, technology companies are acquiring and acquiring those startups. So I think if we see more of this in this young ecosystems, it will encourage more people to get in. So there's a couple of missing, kind of players, but the actual basically corporate innovation, corporate merger and acquisitions, it needs to be more kind of involved in the landscape of entrepreneurship and innovation.
For the companies there that have made it, what was their expansion? Did they expand just in the Middle East, or did they go from Saudi Arabia to Europe or to Africa? Or what was kind of the expansion model for these companies?
Yeah, so we learned like from these startups that they go to specific destinations with a lot of people. So for example, Egypt, India, Pakistan, where there's a population, high number of people over there. So there's a trend of, companies going there. Some of them, they go and either do a direct entry to the market, or some of them actually they go and acquire a startup that with a similar business model. So you will see that this trend of going to Egypt and then going to Pakistan, India, because I think there's a lot of similarities in the culture and stuff like that. But also these countries have a big, have large populations, basically. Yeah.
For these companies, when they partner with others, when they collaborate, I mean, it might be obvious, but what are some of the benefits that they can get? And with working with La Marca and the ecosystem there, can you elaborate a little bit more on these opportunities?
So I think what's really one of the challenges for a lot of startups, like back home, when they basically get invested from the major VCs, and now they're in the stage of going global. So they don't only want capital, they want capital and access to markets. And one of the things that we aspire and we try to basically fill and play a role and is basically this, creating these bridges and connecting, and not only and we wanted to do it in a very seamless way. We want to provide all the startups from these different emerging markets to Silicon Valley, and maybe we have an ambition to go to other tech ecosystem as well, and have this seamless connection. So the startup that involved with us or our community or expert, they should have really easy access to the tech ecosystems. Yeah.
And it goes both ways as well, I think, because for a number of the startups that maybe aren't ready to expand to developed markets, there's so much opportunity for them in the Middle East. But there's great opportunities for them to be able to expand further and faster through partnership with US companies or European companies. And like Fouad said, the total number of exits is low. I think it was something like 70 exits or so last year. But which is nothing, right, compared to the Bay Area.
It's a start.
It's a start. But the thing is, it's grown almost fourfold in the past 4 years. Now, granted, it dropped down this year so far, but the interesting data was, I think, in the recent data, 50% of those exits, the companies had been founded not more than 5 years ago. So there can be a very fast trajectory, and that's a great opportunity for international companies to come into a region that's traditionally been quite hard to do business in if you don't know those markets or have access to it. So I think part of the benefit of the multiverse as well is to help make those connections between Middle Eastern emerging ecosystem startups and advanced, sophisticated, slightly later stage international startups. We can bring more companies in. There's partnership opportunities, acquisition opportunities, a way to get some great tech from the Bay Area or other places into those young ecosystems as well. So there's so many opportunities to create these flows between the markets.
And also like something very interesting, even for the VC landscape, like since the 1960s, VCs were out developing their investment thesis around, let's do a power law. There is 10 of them, maybe one or two will succeed. But now we see like a lot of changes in the way that VC is basically helping the startups, not only by providing capital, but also having more business development teams and also doing a venture builder or maybe an accelerator. So you will see there is a lot of changes in the VC landscape. And we hope also like we tap into this, like also help the VCs maybe moving, because we have a very good experience in building the startup studio and maybe this kind of do this early stage investment and sourcing those deals. So not only like helping the startup, but also we want to help anyone that like think of VC as a very traditional way of investing to maybe incorporate new ideas and very innovative ideas and creating a very good deal flow, either from here or from those emerging markets as well.
Now, you've only been in Silicon Valley a very short amount of time. How do you stay relevant? How have you built out such a vibrant community in such a short amount of time?
Yeah. So I think this is really a great question. Like when we started here, it was very, very important to kind of, I would say, pick the energy of the room. Yeah. Like if people are really here excited about certain topics, okay, how can we basically focus on these topics? And what we realized, there is some trends like generative AI, like sustainability tech, that's very important to people here. And a couple of examples, like we did a hackathon with generative AI here in the multiverse, and we were able to attract top talent to participate in this. We do a lot of ideation sessions, okay, brainstorming sessions about challenges. Sometimes we don't have solutions for this challenge, but at least we engage with the local community on to address and think about them. One of them, prop tech, like, we had a very amazing group of people to think about how to find solutions for, that's housing plus commercial, but the area between residential and commercial real estate. And then we had a couple of ideas to address. We had mid-tech as well. Actually, we had a very interesting story that one time we did an ideation session. This is how, being relevant, around mid-tech. And then we had 10 people come. One of them basically decided to build his own startup. And now he joined one of the largest accelerators in the world. And he actually graduated he got funded just 3 months of coming here. So if answer your question is basically choosing topics, themes that very important to people, having people who knows the ecosystem, like our team here, we have couple of people who are really connected to the ecosystem, engaging with ecosystem leaders, also having them come and speak and increase the quality of the sessions, the speakers, the community that we're bringing. Yeah.
Are there any initiatives right now led by the government to promote the entrepreneur ecosystem, to promote entrepreneurism?
Yeah, I mean, like there's so many. I think there is so many things that actually like last week we had a couple of groups coming basically to with the same objectives. Yeah, around either they want to help companies to export ICT companies. And then the opposite is basically attracting some companies that, are really in the stage of global expansion to go back. So we have, the Saudi unicorn, they came. We have an initiative like back home called The Garage, which is really, really impressive. We have the multiverse as well as one of the initiatives that we are working with a couple of partners. We have also back home Code, which is Center of Digital Entrepreneurship, which they're doing a lot of stuff. So you see a lot, and even in the UAE, and there is a couple of I don't know, maybe we can mention some of the programs in the UAE as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in the UAE as well, and part of it's to bridge the ecosystems, part of it's to create designated startup support systems like Hub 71, Area 2071 in Dubai. Hub 71 is in Abu Dhabi, of course, and lots of programs, educational programs going on as well. One of the things I think is great about the programs, and especially some of the ones Fouad mentioned, that take startups abroad and brings international players to the ecosystem, is we've seen how there's, you can look at an ecosystem, you can say, okay, there's some pieces, there's investment and there's talent and there's accelerators and there's, corporates. And there've been a lot of efforts to try to put in place those big puzzle pieces. But sort of the glue around all of that is just the culture of startups and tech and mindsets, and is there a supportive community? If you wander down to your local coffee shop, can you find someone who's sitting there programming, might have some words of advice? That's a little new still to us. So I feel like bringing people to other parts of the world where that's more developed and dropping them in for a certain amount of time, letting them get a feel for it, what it's like, it changes the vision, it raises the bar a little bit. And that what I might call that sort of slightly intangible side of it. It's where, these international programs that are bringing the companies here or taking others back to the younger ecosystems, they're working towards moving the needle in a way that I think funds of funds, accelerators, incubators, et cetera, have a hard time doing alone.
Yeah. And something really interesting that we kind of also learned through these programs that we have been doing, because a lot of people, even like for us, they say, why do you bring people here? Why do you take people there? And we did a couple of things that were really, really successful. Even some of the programs that we executed recently got like an NPS score of 100. Yeah,
what does that mean for the audience?
So it's a net promoting score, basically like the feedback and the scoring of the overall experience of the program was like really high.
Top mark you can get.
Yes, top mark you can get. And we did a couple of things. One of them is basically like the program itself, having a couple of partners to help us doing that, but also the personal engagement and experiences that we create to those audience by connecting them one-to-one and introducing them to specific people that they aspire, like without this program, they're not able to meet. So we added this kind of personal engagement and I would say customized experience that really, really increase, kind of how happy they were in joining this programs. So like we did a couple of things, and it was like kind of iterative process. We didn't know that these kind of personal engagement will really, have this kind of success. But yeah, I mean, it was really kind of a great learning and storytelling. So I think, it was when you people can attend sessions and stuff, and this is really great. But when we kind of introduced them to someone who had been there, done that, it's a really kind of a different kind of experience that they had in this kind of programs. Yeah.
And a lot of them have been through like accelerator programs, but like Fouad says, and they're great programs. The founders, the startups had been through, but this was now trying to add a new layer on board that it's hard to do just in your local ecosystem. And we had some of the founders saying, they got a chance to sort of step back, zoom out, see things differently. A bunch of them were saying, I thought I was being ambitious, but I suddenly learned what thinking big really means when you come to the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And there's just this, slight shift on the lens and the perspective that I think it's hard to do if you're in a bit of a traditional model. So this was, like Fouad said, this is a pretty unique design.
Yeah, and it's just like this kind of, we came here and we start to think big. Some of it because in their ecosystem, maybe they get the wrong advice, or maybe like the investor told them like focus in this area. But coming here and this ability, even to like they tell us, it's the first time since I started my business I was able to zoom out, and so there was like this kind of a lot of experiential learning through storytelling, through personal engagement that I think made everything we do is very, very unique.
Do you see these companies that come here and then go back to Saudi Arabia or the Middle East, that their companies pivot or change at all?
So they tell us, like some of them, week 2 and the 6th week, we are already pivoting. We found a bigger and a better business model that we are shifting to. Some of them get attractions from global, kind of players here, and this has gave them more confidence. Yeah, I think my solution, can go big if this X company or Y company are interested in my business. So definitely, some of them, they pivoted. They consider, kind of different business model. Some of them even become more ambitious toward acquiring other companies too. So just like completely different mindset from the day that they arrive.
And a lot of them also said, I've realized that I need to build time into my calendar each year to come back. I need to keep these learnings, this feeling fresh.
Yeah.
Because it's hard. It is hard when you go back to a home ecosystem and you're, then bogged back down to the day-to-day of running and building a company, to sort of keep that feeling and that spirit when you're all together abroad going through the program. So I think, and we've had stories of, the founders have come back or relocated or, exploring opportunities here. So I think there's been a significant impact on them.
Yeah. And for us, it was really interesting also to kind of live with these startups for either 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, to kind of really get to know them. And initially, when we, even for the startup studio or the VC side, we that was not part of our investment thesis. We thought like we will go build companies, but now through these different programs, we kind of live with the startups. We talk to them, we engage with them, and that actually make it even for our investment decision to become easier and actually more aligned with what we're trying to achieve. Yeah.
I guess talking about the investment, what is the investment thesis?
Yeah. I think maybe I can start and then maybe Stephanie can help me. But I think a couple of things. Yeah. First, if someone can convince us, that this is a really hot, big, scalable business model, global scalable business model. This is one. And then the team, okay, I like to refer to as a trio. So you have a CEO, you have a CTO, and maybe a CFO. So not only one founder, basically 2 or 3 co-founders. And the third thing is basically our ability to add value. If we think that, this is a business model that we understand all the details, the network effects associated with it, like how can we add value to that business? This is the 3 points that, essential. And I don't know, Stephanie, if you want to add into it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think just the other things, just we're early stage, sector agnostic. We do, of course, look for disruptive, scalable business models. Everybody does, right, in VC. But I think to Fouad's point about where we can add value, for us, where I think we can really help the founders is where we see that they will ultimately have an ambition to go beyond their home borders or even their regional borders. And that's because we have these footprints in different markets. And sure, there's a time to scale and go international, and it's not when you're seed, right? We recognize it takes a while to get there, but being able to invest in and work with and live with these founders for a while beforehand means that we're just that much better prepared to help them when they do need it. This is something that maybe that sounds a little bit obvious, but it's surprising how many startups, I think, who are coming up in the Middle East or emerging markets, and they look at the markets, the populations there, and they feel like they can get to unicorn status just by staying within those borders. And what we're really hoping to see is someone who, recognizes there's a time and a journey to get there, but wants to pursue that different ambition, because that's what's really going to change these ecosystems. Once, to your point about role models, once you start to have a few breakout companies that can make the leap, can prove they can cut it in a different international market, then I think the whole ecosystem sort of gets set on fire and takes off.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting. Someone came to us, one of our portfolio companies said, a lot of investors say that they're strategic investor, but it's the first time I see strategic investor. And we're very genuine about saying that we really kind of work with them, we help them, we make introductions. And through kind of different activities we do, either like events, having them attend. Sometimes we feature them and as a keynote or a panelist. It's basically this added value to, like, I hope that we reach the stage for all of our portfolio companies that we are a strategic investor by adding this substantial value to those companies.
For companies from Silicon Valley that are interested to set up something in the Middle East or maybe London or some other countries, are there any regulatory issues or incentive programs or anything like that? Is there anything that they should be kind of thinking of?
I know, I can talk about maybe the GCC, and so there is a lot of subsidies, a lot of initiatives that want to attract those companies, even in terms of incentive schemes, waivers, tax, kind of packages. So even like relocate programs and stuff like that. So for the companies that really ready to expand, there is so many things that happening there that a lot of even initiatives, a lot of programs wanted to basically attract those companies that ready to expand. Yeah,
these are good programs to take advantage of as well, because there are certain. If I think about sort of the flow, first it's setting up a business, and there would be a choice of free zones to set up in, but there's only a couple in the UAE that operate on common law, sort of internationally recognized law that is, most favored by VC investors. There are free zones likely to emerge in other countries as well. But I think that's one consideration they should look at when they're thinking about visas or hiring talent. Now, it's great to see, there's entrepreneurship visas that are being offered in a lot of the countries. So whereas before it was quite difficult, if you're a founder or talent for a startup, to figure out what visa you should be on to really cater to your needs, now that's being addressed as well, which is great. Trading across borders then to access the market, that's going to be a little, market by market specific. But like Fouad said, there's programs, there's advisors there to help with those sorts of things as well. So I think, companies heading over there should take advantage of those programs.
What's the most difficult thing you're finding in your kind of roles?
That's a tough question. So one of the most difficult things is basically, in my opinion, is finding talent. So either from the consulting side and having people who have experience in designing and running this kind of programs. From the startup studio side, finding founders. So it's not easy to find a founder who is really coachable and if he has an idea, is willing to pivot his idea to work on a bigger idea. So if that, I think in my opinion, one of the most challenging thing is finding talent. Yeah, to join the team and have passion for technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I would also just say, from personally, I would also say, because based on what we do, there's a lot of moving around. So moving between the emerging markets in the Middle East, Europe here, like, man, your time zone, the West Coast is great. California and Silicon Valley are great, but trying to figure out how to work across a 9, 10, 11 hour, 12-hour difference is something that, we see this with the companies and the founders that come over as well. You're getting messages at 4 a.m., at midnight. These are things that I think, we feel like we live in a global world, and we have a lot of, things like Zoom, which are great, but trying to move around and manage all of that is a little unique, and we're working on that. And the other part of it as well is it's interesting how every time you slot into a different location or a different ecosystem, there are slightly different cultural norms or behaviors or attitudes. And when we bring folks over here, we really want them to get the most out of their 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And sometimes, there's a very different style of networking. Do you just go right up and talk to someone and give your pitch and ask for something and walk on? Or do you build the relationship, warm it up? These are things we're finding, we're adapting to in each market, but we're also having to encourage the participants in our program to get on board with as well.
I'm really curious about the cultural coaching you give companies from the Middle East when they come here to Silicon Valley. What about the coaching you give Silicon Valley companies when they want to go to the Middle East?
So I feel like we're trying to give them as much of an idea as possible before they arrive here, what it's going to be like, how people, anything from, like how people dress, what a typical, meeting format is, things like that. But then also just, everyone here is really friendly, but everyone here will jump in and start saying their piece and connecting and making introductions. It's both fantastic because everyone is so open and willing to help with the sort of the pay it forward vibe. It also means that it can be intimidating to trying to get your piece in and your ask in. So I think a lot of the coaching is just, there's no formal coaching. It's just talking to them. It's telling them stories from our experience. It's telling them the stories of the previous batches. It's having some of the founders from the previous programs come in and tell it in their words.
Fouad, would you like to take the second part of that? Companies from Silicon Valley here going to the Middle East?
I think I would say building relationships. So people before kind of maybe expanding, or maybe the sales itself or the sales process, try to connect with people. So we always advise people to go there, build that relationship, connect with people, and kind of try to understand more about what basically the need and how can you be an added value to them. And it's not only about that transaction. It should be like a relationship. So building a relationship is a key for people who want to move there. And even maintaining that relationship, even if, for example, if we're working on the project either before the project, during the project, and after the project as well, is really, really important, I would say. Yeah.
The local VCs there, do you think that they're more interested in getting access to Silicon Valley startups to deploy their capital, or more interested in local startups to invest in? Or what are you kind of seeing for investors' appetite?
I think a lot of them looking for local deals because this is they have access to those deals. We will see a lot of trends on fund of funds, also that's really kind of becoming really popular. And those they are active here in Silicon Valley to looking for international investment, because they realize that if you go international, it's not easy to find good deals. So the best way, one of the maybe smartest move that they do, is basically look for a well-established investors and then basically become an LP for that. So you will see this trend of maybe having investing directly on startup over there. But when they come here to the US or in the global markets, they either do syndicates or they act as an LP. Fund to fund, basically with leading VCs here. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how fast it evolves as well. typically seen a lot of early stage sector agnostic funds, just because that's what the startup funnel was bringing to investors. And now we're seeing more growth stage funds launching. We're seeing larger fund sizes being announced. We're seeing more move into sector specific funds. There was a recent announcement around 80 million fintech specific fund. There's health tech specific focus. There's interestingly $200 million fund for high tech early stage, because we haven't been as high tech as most other ecosystems. So there's an appetite to go into high tech, and that's for both local and international startups. So some of these big initiatives that are pushing in that direction, what says, is the current status, but I'm interested to see how that evolves over the next few years as well, especially those programs that bring in international founders and soft landing programs. I think will start to diversify the profile of the portfolios.
And I have a wish list, for those any emerging ecosystems. A couple of things actually. Maybe we will see those corporates acquire more. So like all the largest, maybe telecoms, the banks, they start because there's a trend of these companies going and building companies, which is fine, if you have, but also I would like to see more of them acquiring companies, because this is kind of create more success stories for the investors, for the startups and all that. So this is one kind of my wish list, but also more LPs. So you'll see a couple of family offices that become the GP, but we see also a lot of influencers, a lot of sports figures. Okay, they're not investing in tech. So, and also like endowments and stuff like. So I hope to see more LPs kind of coming and supporting GPs and investing in those and invest in technology itself. Because if you see, if you go do analysis, a lot of GPs, they're only kind of family offices. But yeah, so the movement of having more LPs to support the GPs and different kind of LPs is really gonna help a lot the ecosystems.
Was there anything that we didn't cover that you really think that our audience could benefit from, the knowledge, the wisdom, the experience?
I suppose what I would put out there is a little bit of a plug for the emerging ecosystems. I think it's fair to generate a little bit of excitement for them, because I really see it as some of the most exciting parts of the world in terms of the pace of growth in the exits. This is we're coming off a little bit of a high as well. We'll see how it goes, but hopefully that also increases sort of competition and then the quality. But I think I was looking at some of the data a while back, and when you look at, everyone loves to look at, are we getting to unicorn status? So I think if I look at the MENA region, Middle East, North Africa, Turkey, African continent as a whole, we've been able to tally up maybe 20 unicorns in total. And that sounds like a blip on the radar. When we look at latest data, a couple of years ago, there was a bumper crop of new unicorns. Just in 2021 across the world, I think there was 500 plus new unicorns, 2/3 in the US, China, and India. But if I look back to the early days of counting this, right, from when it was first defined in 2013, I think CB Insights tried to do some analysis, and they counted back as far as 2010, 2007, up to 2014. And they counted 22 unicorns across those first 7 years of tallying it, sort of when the term became popularized. So if the entire world could produce about 20 unicorns in those 7 years, and our ecosystems have really only been, picking up speed for about 7 years, and we're already doing the 20 unicorns, I would say this is really sort of the frontier market of exciting growth stage companies, exit opportunities, potentially really important, successful companies. So for anybody over here who's interested in bringing their technologies or their companies into great new markets, this is an opportunity to partner with or even acquire some of these companies. So that's my little,
Yeah, and it's like, invitation to, finding those opportunities on those emerging markets. But also I have also like one thing that I want to see, even from either like big kind of VCs or investment firms, is that I want to think together and invite everyone maybe to think of new ways of investment, new ways of finding deals, new ways of supporting entrepreneurs. So, like, okay, you have your basically the way that you have built your investment strategy, but let's come together and think about what can we do differently in terms of accelerating an acquisition, or maybe doing a venture builder or incubator. So even if you are focused on one thing, this is the way that you normally invest. Let's kind of think together how we basically bring new ways of basically investment and finding deal flow. So this is kind of thing I want to see even from everyone to kind of think together and maybe changing and updating the way that we do investment.
Perfect. And with that, let's have some closing thoughts. Anything we should expect to see in Lamarca in the coming years? Anything else that you'd like to add before wrapping this up?
Yeah, so I think since the start here in Silicon Valley, maybe it's been a year or so, it's the excitement, what we have been hearing from people, even, the Silicon Valley magazine was listing us as the best in the Bay maybe a couple of months ago. So to hear that excitement, it was really a great kind of testimony of what we can do further here, but also the ambition is to take, kind of this initiative to London, Berlin, to different ecosystem as well with our partners. So we want to kind of go to different ecosystems and build that kind of connection and bridges. And as I mentioned in the beginning, is like providing the seamless access to different ecosystems. So this is, I think, the ambition and that what we are trying to do.
Stephanie, would you like to add anything for a closing thought?
Only that I think there's a really exciting journey ahead. We're already starting to build these roads into the UK ecosystems. And while this is just a fantastic place to be in Silicon Valley, there are some great, zones of really incredible deep tech innovation and sector-specific fintech and other things happening over there. So all of these different places that are on the route map to go to bring something new. And for us, if we can be able to offer startups and founders from emerging markets a range of places to learn from and grow in, that's a fantastic opportunity for everybody.
Yeah, and we want to invite all the people that are interested. And basically, as I mentioned, that the definition for us is the ultimate platform for strategy, technology, and innovation. So if you're interested in strategy and technology, please reach out. I think we can maybe put the website and like the LinkedIn, and so people kind of learn more. But this is an open invitation for anyone that was passionate about these three areas to get engaged and get involved with us. Yeah.
All right. We'll have that link in the show notes. And when I'm not the host of the Silicon Valley podcast, I'm an investment banker, mergers, acquisition, growth capital. Connect with me on LinkedIn and go to our website, thesiliconvalleypodcast.com, where we'll have this interview, our past interviews, and what we're working on. And with that,